This 4-year-old street urchin sees a millionaire get struck in the back with a brick, but she appears behind the assailant and does something that shocks everyone. Watch until the end. You won't regret it. Comment what you think is going to happen. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The rain poured down on the brick streets of the small town of Harmony Creek, transforming the asphalt into mirrors that reflected the yellow glow of the old streetlights. It was 3:30 p.m. on a dreary Tuesday when Isabella "Izzy" Santos, just 4 years old, ran for cover under the awning of the town's central drugstore, Walgreens. Her bare feet splashed in the puddles, and her tattered dress, which had once been pink, now hung in rags on her skinny frame. Having lived on the streets for 2 years, the little girl had learned to read the signs of the times with the precision of someone who had no choice. She knew where to find food behind Joe's bakery, knew the schedules of the local cops, and had mapped out every corner where she could sleep undisturbed. Her little hands were always dirty with soil, but her brown eyes shone with an intelligence that contrasted with her neglected appearance. That afternoon, as she huddled against the cold wall of the drugstore, she watched the activity in the shopping district diminish due to the rain. Shopkeepers were closing their doors early, and she knew she would have to find another place to spend the night. It was then that she saw Benjamin "Ben" Caldwell walking along Main Street, distracted, talking on his cell phone to someone about construction schedules and problems with suppliers. The 58-year-old businessman was a well-known figure in town. Owner of Caldwell Construction, he had built half the commercial buildings in the area and directly employed over 200 people. That day, he was wearing a navy blue suit that was starting to darken from the rain, and he was carrying a brown leather briefcase under his arm. His graying temples and upright posture betrayed both his age and his social standing. Ben was finishing a tense conversation about delays in the delivery of materials when he hung up the phone with an irritated sigh. He put the device in the inside pocket of his jacket and continued walking, unaware of the hooded figure following him about 20 yards behind. The masked man moved carefully, taking advantage of the awnings and the few people on the street to camouflage himself. Izzy, with the heightened attention of someone who lived constantly on alert, was the first to notice something wrong. She saw the man take something heavy out of his coat. It looked like a piece of brick, and quicken his pace towards Ben. Her little heart pounded when she realized what was about to happen, but her feet remained glued to the ground, paralyzed by fear. The attack was quick and brutal. The attacker came up behind Ben and delivered a well-aimed blow with the brick to the lower back. The businessman let out a cry of pain that echoed through the empty streets and collapsed on the wet pavement, his briefcase opening and scattering papers that were soon soaked. The masked man looked quickly around, grabbed Ben's wallet, and ran towards the alley that led to the town market. It was at that moment that something extraordinary happened. Izzy, who had witnessed violence in the streets more times than a 4-year-old should, felt a strange force moving her legs. Instead of running away or hiding, she ran in the rain towards the fallen man. Her little legs carried her faster than she had ever run, and when she reached Ben, who was moaning in pain on the cold ground, she knelt beside him. "You're hurt," she said in her childish but firm voice. "You can't stay here in the rain." Her small, dirty hands tried to help him sit up, and when Ben opened his eyes, still dizzy from the pain, he saw the angelic face of the girl leaning over him with a genuine concern that left him completely disconcerted. "Honey, where did you come from?" he murmured, trying to get his bearings. The pain in his back was intense, and he felt something warm running down, probably blood, but the presence of that child strangely reassured him. "I saw the bad man hurt you," Izzy explained, taking off the small wool sweater she was wearing under her dress and placing it under his head to protect him from the rain. "He ran that way," she pointed in the direction of the alley. "He had a scar on his left hand right here," she showed, touching between the thumb and forefinger of her own hand. Ben was impressed with the accuracy of the girl's observations. Even in shock and feeling terrible pain, he realized that she had captured details that he hadn't even noticed about his attacker. How did you see all that?" "I always look at people," she replied simply. "On the street, you have to know who's dangerous." Her words carried a frightening maturity for her age, the result of an early survival that should have been child's play. The rain continued to fall, and Izzy realized that they needed to get out of there. She looked around and saw some people starting to approach, attracted by the shouts. "Sir, can you stand up? You have to go to the hospital." With the unlikely help of that unknown girl, Ben managed to lean against the wall of the nearest store. Each movement was torture, but he knew she was right. When the ambulance arrived, called by a shopkeeper who had witnessed the scene from afar, Ben held Izzy's small hand and asked, "Come with me, please." Izzy hesitated for a moment. Hospitals were places she associated with bad times in her short life, when her mother had crises because of drugs, when she herself had been hurt in the streets. But there was something in the man's eyes that made her feel that, for the first time in a long time, someone really needed her as much as she needed someone. St. Vincent's Hospital was the largest in the area, with white corridors that smelled of disinfectant and a constant movement of doctors and nurses. Izzy had never been in such a clean and organized place. Sitting in the plastic chair next to the gurney where Ben was being examined, she swung her legs nervously, her little feet not touching the ground. Dr. Ed Menzies, a 42-year-old orthopedic surgeon and a personal friend of Ben, finished analyzing the X-ray exams with a worried expression. "Ben, you were lucky. 2 cracked ribs and a serious contusion to the lumbar spine, but nothing that will permanently compromise your mobility. You'll need absolute rest for at least 2 weeks." "And after that?" asked Ben, trying to disguise the anxiety in his voice. The medicated pain still pulsed in his back, and he felt every breath like a stabbing. "Intensive physical therapy for 2 months, maybe 3. And no stress. Your blood pressure skyrocketed with the trauma." Dr. Ed looked discreetly at Izzy, who was watching everything attentively. "Ben, this girl, is she your granddaughter?" The question caught Ben off guard. He looked at Izzy, who was staring at him with those big, hopeful eyes, and felt something strange in his chest. "No, Doc, she saved me, was there when I was attacked and helped me." Dr. Ed lowered his voice. "Did you notice her condition?" "She's malnourished, has marks from small injuries on her arms, typical of someone living on the streets, needs medical attention." While the 2 men were talking, Izzy got up from the chair and approached the window of the room. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still cloudy. She pressed her little face against the cold glass and began to mentally count the cars passing on the street. 1, 2, 3, 4 white cars, 2 blue, 1 red. It was a habit she had developed to calm her anxiety. "Izzy," Ben called softly, "come here." She approached slowly, still wary. In the 2 years living alone, she had learned that adults didn't always keep their promises, and hospitals were places where bad things happened. "Dr. Ed wants to examine you too, okay? Just to see if you're okay." "I'm not sick," she said, instinctively taking a step back. "I'm just hungry." "Doctor." Ed crouched down to her level, using the gentle tone he reserved for child patients. "It won't hurt at all, I promise. I just want to listen to your heart and see if you need vitamins." The examination revealed what both men already suspected. Izzy was severely malnourished for her age, with obvious signs of vitamin deficiency. She weighed only 31 pounds when she should weigh at least 40. Her teeth showed signs of malnutrition, and there were small scars on her arms and legs, marks of a hard life on the streets. "When was the last time you ate a full meal?" asked Dr. Ed, making notes on the chart. Izzy thought for a moment, counting on her little fingers. 3 days, or 4, Joe from the bakery gave me bread with bologna on Sunday. Ben felt his heart clench. A 4-year-old shouldn't have to count the days without food. And your family, Izzy? Where are your parents? The girl's face closed immediately. Mom left a long time ago, said she was going to buy medicine and never came back. Her voice was small, but there were no tears. The tears had dried up a long time ago. And your father? Never had a father. Mom said he didn't want a daughter. Dr. Ed and Ben exchanged a meaningful look. The situation was more serious than they imagined. Izzy, do you have a place to stay tonight? Asked the doctor. Yes, I do. I know a place behind the church where it doesn't rain. She spoke as if it were the most normal thing in the world, but there was a deep sadness in her eyes that broke their hearts. It was at that moment that Ben made a decision that would change his life forever. Doc, I'm taking her with me. Ben, you need absolute rest, taking care of a child in these conditions. She saved me, Ben interrupted, his voice firm despite the pain. It's the least I can do. Besides, I'll need company during my recovery. Izzy looked at him with a mixture of hope and distrust. Do you really want me to go to your house? Yes, I do, but only if you want to come. For the first time since they met, Izzy smiled. A small, hesitant, but genuine smile. I want to. Dr. Ed sighed, knowing enough about Ben to know that it was no use arguing. I'll prescribe vitamins for her, and I'll ask the nutritionist to develop a meal plan. But Ben, you need to understand that this girl will need psychological support too. 2 years on the streets leave marks. While they waited for the medications and medical instructions, Ben watched Izzy carefully exploring the room. She touched things with reverence, as if it were a museum. The clean bed with white sheets, the TV remote, the phone on the bedside table. To her, all of that was unimaginable luxury. Izzy, do you remember the man who attacked me? Can you describe him better? The girl's eyes focused immediately. He was about your height, but thinner. He wore a black hooded jacket and a mask that covered his mouth and nose, but not his eyes. His eyes were kind of green, kind of grey, and the scar on his left hand looked old, all white. Ben was impressed with the accuracy of the description. You have an incredible memory. Mom always said I remembered everything, even the things she wanted to forget. What kind of things? Izzy lowered her eyes. The fights, the men who came to the house, the times she got very sick because of the medicine she took. Ben began to understand the dimension of the trauma the child carried. Her mother, Joanna Santos, clearly had struggled with drug addiction, and Izzy had witnessed all of it before being abandoned. Do you remember where your mother worked? In many places. She cleaned offices and stores at night. She always came home very late, and when she came, she was always angry or sad. Izzy paused. Sometimes she brought papers home and kept reading them. Said they were important things, but I couldn't read yet. Something about that information caught Ben's attention, but he couldn't exactly identify what. Dr. Ed returned with a bag full of medications and instructions. Izzy will need to take these vitamins 3 times a day, always with food. And Ben, I want to see her here next week to monitor nutritional recovery. When they finally left the hospital, it was already 7 in the evening. Izzy firmly held Ben's hand as they walked slowly towards his car, a black sedan that seemed immense to her. She had never ridden in a car before. Where do you live? She asked, as Ben carefully adjusted the seat to avoid aggravating the pain in his back. On the other side of town, in a big house with a garden. You'll like it. As the car drove away from downtown and climbed the tree-lined streets of Harmony Creek's upscale neighborhood, Izzy pressed her face against the window, watching the houses get bigger and more beautiful. When they finally arrived at Ben's mansion, a 2-story building with manicured gardens and a fountain at the entrance, her jaw dropped. This is your house? Our house now, Ben corrected, but inside he knew that explaining that situation to his daughter Valerie would be much more complicated than he imagined. The Caldwell mansion was silent when Ben parked in the garage. The living room lights were on, indicating that Valerie was home, something that hadn't happened often in recent months. Izzy got out of the car slowly, still impressed with the size of the house, and instinctively held Ben's hand as he led her through the side door that gave direct access to the kitchen. Donna Carmen, the 63-year-old housekeeper who had worked for the family for over 15 years, almost dropped the pan she was holding when she saw them walk in. "Mr. Caldwell, what happened? I heard on the radio that there was a robbery downtown, but I didn't know that." "I'm fine, Carmen. Just some bruises." Ben paused, watching the housekeeper's reaction as she noticed Izzy. "This is Izzy. She's going to stay with us for a while." Carmen was a practical woman, used to her boss's impulsive decisions, but this caught her completely off guard. She observed the girl, her tangled hair, dirty clothes, bare feet, and her maternal instinct immediately kicked in. Good heavens, this child needs a bath and some food urgently. She crouched down to Izzy's height. "Hi, honey. What's your name?" "Izzy," she replied timidly, hiding behind Ben's leg. "What a pretty name. Are you hungry?" Izzy nodded vigorously, and Carmen smiled. "Then let's take care of that right away. Mr. Caldwell, go and rest. I'll take care of her." It was at that moment that Valerie appeared in the kitchen, drawn by the voices. At 28, she was an elegant woman, with perfectly styled brown hair and expensive clothes that reflected her status as a successful lawyer. When she saw the scene, her injured father, an unknown dirty child in the kitchen, and Carmen already preparing plates of food, her expression immediately hardened. "Dad, what's going on here?" Ben sighed, knowing this conversation would be difficult. "Valerie, this is Izzy. She helped me today when I was attacked downtown. She's going to stay with us while we recover." "Attacked? What do you mean, attacked?" Valerie's voice rose an octave, mixing genuine concern with irritation. "And why is this girl here? Where did she come from?" Izzy immediately sensed the hostility in the woman's voice and shrank even further behind Ben. Carmen, not wasting any time with the family drama unfolding, began preparing a plate of macaroni and cheese. "She doesn't have a family, Valerie. She was living on the streets. And is that our problem?" The words came out harsher than Valerie intended, but the surprise and the weariness of a hard day at the office had eliminated her filter. "Dad, you can't just show up at home with an unknown child and decide she's going to live here." Ben leaned against the kitchen counter, the pain in his back intensifying with the stress of the situation. "She saved me, Valerie. If it weren't for her, I could have died on that sidewalk. Then pay for a hotel for her, hire a nanny, make a donation to some institution, but don't bring her into our house." Izzy, who had until then remained silent, raised her eyes and looked directly at Valerie. "I don't want to bother you. I can go back to my place behind the church." The innocence in the girl's voice made Valerie hesitate for a moment, but the rigidity quickly returned. "It's not about bothering me. It's about responsibility. My father is injured, needs medical attention, and can't take on the responsibility for a child." Carmen, who had observed the entire discussion while heating the macaroni and cheese, intervened with the authority of someone who had taken care of that family for years. "Miss Valerie, the girl is starving. How about we discuss this after she eats something?" The steaming plate was placed on the kitchen table, and Izzy looked at it as if it were a treasure. With Ben's permission, she sat down in the chair and began to eat slowly, savoring each bite. It was the first hot meal she had had in almost a week. Valerie watched the girl eat and felt a pang of guilt, but quickly suppressed it. She had her own worries and responsibilities. "Dad, I need to talk to you in private." They went to the study, leaving Izzy in Carmen's care. The room was solemn, with shelves full of law and engineering books, Ben's diploma on the wall, and a large table covered with blueprints from the construction company. "Dad, do you have any idea what you're doing? You don't know this girl. You don't know where she came from, if she has any diseases, if she's violent." "Valerie, She's 4 years old and weighs 31 pounds. What kind of violence could a child like that represent? I'm not talking about physical violence. I'm talking about legal problems, about responsibilities you're not prepared to take on. What if her parents show up demanding compensation for kidnapping? What if she gets hurt here and we get sued? Ben dropped into the leather armchair, the physical pain mixing with emotional frustration. Her mother abandoned her 2 years ago. She was living on the streets, Valerie. On the streets. And there are appropriate institutions to take care of cases like that. Orphanages, qualified foster families, trained social workers. You're a businessman, Dad, not a social worker. I'm a human being before I'm a businessman. Valerie took a deep breath, trying to control her growing irritation. Dad, you just got out of the hospital. You have 2 cracked ribs and will need months of recovery. How do you intend to take care of a traumatized child in those conditions? Carmen can help me. And you could too. Me? Valerie laughed humorlessly. Dad, I work 12 hours a day at Cassio's office. I have complex cases, demanding clients, professional responsibilities. I don't have the time or experience to take care of a child. Ben observed his daughter and realized how much she had become like himself in his most ambitious years, focused exclusively on work, measuring everything in terms of profit and loss, avoiding emotional commitments that could interfere with professional plans. Valerie, when your mother left, you were only 12 years old. Do you remember how difficult it was? Of course I remember. And I also remember how you dealt with the situation by hiring nannies and boarding schools instead of personally taking responsibility. The answer came out more bitter than Valerie intended, revealing old wounds that she had tried to bury. The silence that followed was charged with tension. Ben knew his daughter was right about his past, but he also knew that this was an opportunity to do things differently, to be better. Maybe that's exactly why I need to do this now, he said finally. Maybe I need to learn to be the father I should have been to you. Very nice, Dad, very touching. But what about the practical aspects? What about the company? Are you going to leave everything in Roger's hands while you play adoptive father? The mention of the accountant made Ben frown. Roger Medeiros had worked at the construction company for 15 years and was responsible for all the financial aspects of the company. In recent months, Ben had noticed some minor irregularities in the reports, but he had attributed them to calculation errors or problems with the system. Roger can take care of the company for a few weeks. He knows all the processes. Dad, you trust people too much. It's always been your problem. At that moment, Carmen appeared at the door of the study. Sorry to interrupt, but the girl is asking to speak to Mr. Caldwell. I think she's afraid you're going to send her away. When they returned to the kitchen, they found Izzy sitting in the same place, the empty plate in front of her, nervously playing with a small bracelet of colored beads, apparently the only personal possession she had. Mr. Caldwell, she said in a small voice, if the lady doesn't want me to stay, I understand. I can leave. Ben knelt beside her chair, ignoring the pain that the movement caused. Izzy, do you want to stay here? I really want to. I've never eaten such tasty food. I've never slept in a real bed. But if I'm causing trouble, you're not causing any trouble at all. This is your home now. Valerie watched the scene with conflicting feelings. Part of her was moved by the girl's vulnerability, but the practical part, shaped by years of corporate law and calculated relationships, saw only future complications. Dad, I need to go. Cassio is waiting for me for dinner, and we have to review some important contracts early tomorrow. She grabbed her purse and car keys. I hope you know what you're doing. After Valerie left, Carmen helped Izzy take a bath. The first hot bath of her life that she could remember. The housekeeper found some old clothes from when Valerie was a child, stored in the attic, and improvised pajamas. When Izzy came down to say goodbye to Ben before going to bed, he barely recognized her. Clean, with combed hair and appropriate clothes, she looked like a completely different child. But it was her eyes that impressed him the most. They shone with deep gratitude and a cautious hope that he hadn't seen in a long time. "Good night, Mr. Caldwell. Thank you for everything." "Good night, Izzy, and you can just call me Ben." As Carmen took the girl to the guest room upstairs, Ben sat alone in the living room, reflecting on the events of the day. In less than 12 hours, his life had changed completely. He had been attacked by a stranger, hospitalized, and now had a child living in his house. He picked up the phone and dialed Roger, needing to update the accountant on his situation and the next few days of absence from the company. The conversation would be more complicated than he imagined. The phone rang 3 times before Roger Medeiros answered. It was almost 10 at night, and his voice sounded slightly irritated when he recognized Ben's number. "Ben, what time is it to call? I thought you were in the hospital." "I'm at home, Roger. I need to tell you what happened today." Ben settled into the armchair in the study, trying to find a position that wouldn't intensify the pain in his back. "I was attacked downtown." "Attacked? What do you mean attacked? Are you okay?" "2 cracked ribs and a contusion in the spine. The doctor said I need absolute rest for 2 weeks, maybe 3. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "My God, Ben. Did you see who it was? Were you able to give the police a description?" "Actually, yes. A witness saw everything and gave very precise details of the attacker. Average height, black jacket, mask covering part of the face, but with a very specific scar on his left hand." The silence that followed lasted a few seconds longer than it should have. "Scar on his left hand? That's strange. What kind of scar?" "Between the thumb and forefinger, apparently old and very visible." Ben didn't notice the growing tension in Roger's voice. "Roger, you're going to need to take over all the company operations while I recover. I know it's a lot of responsibility, but you know all the processes." Of course. You can count on me. But this witness, who was it? Someone reliable?" Ben smiled as he thought of Izzy. "A 4-year-old girl, unbelievably observant for her age. By the way, she's living here at my house now." "Living there? Ben, are you sure that's prudent? An unknown child? She doesn't have a family. She was living on the streets. She was the one who helped me after the attack." "And where exactly did this happen? What time?" "On the pedestrian street in the shopping district. Around 3:30 in the afternoon." "Why all these questions, Roger? I'm just trying to understand the situation. You know how dangerous it is to walk around alone lately. Maybe we should hire personal security for you." Ben frowned. In 15 years of friendship and professional partnership, Roger had never shown so much concern for his personal safety. "I don't think it's necessary. It must have just been an opportunistic robber." "Even so, I'll arrange some security measures for the company." "We can't take risks." After hanging up, Ben had a strange feeling. Roger had asked very specific questions about the attack, almost as if he were investigating the details. He shook his head, attributing his distrust to fatigue and pain medication. Upstairs, Izzy was lying in the softest bed she had ever experienced in her life, but she couldn't sleep. The sheets smelled of lavender, very different from the smell of mold and dirt she was used to. Carmen had left a nightlight on, but even so, every noise in the house made her alert. Around midnight, she got up and walked silently to the window. From the 2nd floor, she could see the garden lit by the moon, and in the distance, the lights of the city. It was a completely different view from what she had when she slept behind the church, where she only saw the brick wall and the accumulated trash. Her thoughts turned to her mother, Joanna. Was she alive somewhere? Did she ever think of her sometimes? Izzy touched the bead bracelet, the last gift she had received before the abandonment. "Mom always said I remembered everything," she murmured to herself. And it was true. Izzy remembered details that most children would forget. She remembered conversations her mother had on the phone late at night, always whispering about important papers and information that was worth money. She remembered the men who visited her mother, always nervous, always looking around before entering the house. One of those men had a scar on his left hand, exactly like the man who had attacked Ben. Izzy sat up in bed, her heart beating faster. Could it be the same person? She closed her eyes and tried to remember better. The man visited her mother about once a month, always brought envelopes with money, and her mother always got very nervous after he left. "Joanna, you need to get me more information about Caldwell Construction," she remembered him saying on one of those visits, "especially about the contracts with the city." At the time, Izzy didn't know what Caldwell Construction meant, but now she was living in the house of a man who had exactly a company with that name. Could it be a coincidence? She got up and walked to the door of the room, listening carefully. The house was silent. She went downstairs carefully, avoiding the steps that creaked, a talent developed in the 2 years living on the streets. Ben's study was dark, but there was enough light coming from the street for her to see the papers scattered on the table. Izzy couldn't read very well, but she recognized some simple words, and there, on several sheets, was written Caldwell Construction. Her eyes fixed on a half-open drawer. Inside, she saw a framed photo of a man and a woman smiling. The woman had brown hair and a gentle smile. Below the photo, on a gold plaque, was written, "In memory of Laura Caldwell, 1970-2016. Izzy held the photo carefully, observing the woman's face. There was something familiar about those features, but she couldn't exactly identify what. She put the photo back in the drawer and was about to leave the study when she heard footsteps upstairs. She ran silently back to her room and lay down on the bed, pretending to sleep. A few minutes later, she heard Ben coming down the stairs. His steps were slow and careful because of his injuries. He went to the kitchen, probably to get water or pain medication. The next morning, Izzy woke up to the smell of coffee and toast. Carmen was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast and humming an old tune. Ben was sitting at the table, still wearing his pajamas, with a worried expression as he read some papers. "Good morning," Izzy said timidly. "Good morning, dear." "Did you sleep well?" asked Carmen, serving a glass of warm chocolate milk. "Yes, I did." Izzy sat down at the table and watched Ben. "Are you in pain?" "A little, but it'll get better." He smiled at her. "Today we're going to talk about some important things. About school, about documents, about your future." "I can't read very well," Izzy admitted. "My mum started to teach me, but then she got very sick and forgot. We'll take care of that. Carmen can start teaching you some things, and when I get better, we'll look for a good school." While they were having breakfast, the phone rang. It was Roger, calling earlier than usual. "Ben, I need to talk to you urgently. Some clients are worried about the delays in the schedules, and we have an important meeting with the City Council on Friday. You can represent the company at the meeting, Roger. You have my complete trust." "Of course, but I would need your signature on some documents. Would it be possible for me to stop by your house this afternoon?" Ben hesitated. He still felt too sore to receive work visits, but he knew that some matters couldn't wait. "All right, but make it quick." After hanging up, Ben noticed that Izzy was very quiet, nervously playing with the bead bracelet. "Is everything okay, Izzy?" She raised her eyes, and there was a deep worry in them that didn't match her age. "Ben, can I tell you something about the man who hurt you?" "Of course. What do you remember?" I think I've seen him before. At my old house, when I lived with my mum." Ben leaned forward, ignoring the pain that the movement caused. "Are you sure? He used to visit my mum sometimes. He always brought money and talked about your company." Ben's blood ran cold. "My company? Are you sure he mentioned Caldwell Construction?" Izzy nodded gravely. "He wanted my mom to find out things about you. Important papers, he said." Ben was silent for a long moment, processing this information. If Izzy was right, the attack hadn't been a random robbery. It had been personal, targeted, and possibly related to the company. "Izzy, this is very important," Would you be able to recognize this man if you saw him again? I can. I remember his face, his voice, and especially the scar on his hand. At that moment, Ben made a decision that would change the course of the entire investigation. He picked up the phone and called Dr. Ed at the hospital. Ed, I need a favor. Can you recommend a reliable private investigator? I have reason to believe that yesterday's attack wasn't a common robbery. While he was talking on the phone, Ben didn't notice that Izzy had gotten up and was looking out the window. A grey car was parked across the street, and a man inside it seemed to be watching the house. The same man she remembered seeing at her mother's house, the same man with the scar on his left hand. Izzy remained still at the window, watching the man in the grey car. He was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, but she could see part of his profile. The same aquiline nose, the same tense posture she remembered from the visits to her mother. The car was positioned to have a full view of the entrance to the Caldwell house. "Ben," she called in a low voice, without moving away from the window. "There's a man in the car outside." Ben quickly ended the call with Dr. Ed and approached, moving carefully because of the pain. When he looked out the window, the grey car was making a turn and disappearing around the corner. "Where is he? I don't see any car." "He left now. He was parked there, looking at our house." Izzy turned to him with a frightened expression. "It was him, Ben. The man who hurt you, I'm sure." Carmen, who had heard part of the conversation from the kitchen, approached, drying her hands on her apron. "Mr. Caldwell, if there's someone watching the house, maybe we should call the police." Ben shook his head. "We don't have any proof of anything yet. And if Izzy is right about the connection to her mother, this could be more complicated than we imagined." He went to the study. "Carmen, can you keep an eye on Izzy for a few minutes? I need to make some important calls." An hour later, private investigator Marcus Silva was sitting in the Caldwell's living room. At 45 years old, he was a former police detective who had opened his own investigation agency 5 years ago. Dr. Ed had recommended him as discreet and efficient. "Mr. Caldwell, from what I understand, you suspect that the attack wasn't random." "Exactly. And I have a witness who may have crucial information." Ben looked at Izzy, who was sitting next to him on the sofa. "Izzy, can you tell Detective Silva what you told me about the man who attacked me?" In a small but firm voice, Izzy recounted her memories of the man's visits to her mother, the envelopes of money, and the conversations about Caldwell construction. Detective Silva made careful notes, impressed with the accuracy of the details the girl was able to provide. "Izzy, do you remember this man's name? Did your mother call him something?" "She always called him Mr. Roger. And he always smelled of cigarettes, the kind that make your throat burn." Ben felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "Roger, are you sure?" "I am. My mom always got nervous when he arrived. She said he paid well, but he was a dangerous man." Detective Silva stopped writing and looked directly at Ben. "Mr. Caldwell, do you know someone named Roger?" "Roger Medeiros, my accountant for 15 years. He's practically my right hand in the company." Ben's voice was hoarse with shock. "But that's impossible. Roger is completely trustworthy. Dad?" Everyone turned around. Valerie was standing in the doorway of the living room, still wearing her work suit. She had arrived without anyone noticing, and her expression was of total confusion. "Valerie, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be working?" "Cassio let me off early today. Said he had some personal matters to take care of." She looked at the detective and then at Izzy. "Dad, what's going on? Who is this man?" Ben introduced the detective and quickly summarized the situation for his daughter. With each word, Valerie grew paler. "Dad, are you saying that Roger tried to kill you? That's absurd. He's worked for our family for 15 years. "I know how it sounds, Valerie. But the evidence—" "What evidence?" "The testimony of a 4-year-old who spent 2 years living on the streets." Valerie looked at Izzy with a mixture of skepticism and irritation. Dad, you can't ruin a man's life based on the imagination of a traumatized child. Izzy shrank on the sofa, but kept her gaze steady. I'm not imagining. I remember everything. Detective Silver intervened diplomatically. Ms. Valerie, I understand your concern, but investigations start with clues, no matter where they come from. I'll discreetly verify the information before we draw any conclusions. And how do you intend to do that? First, I'll investigate the history of Izzy's mother, Joanna Santos. If she really worked as a cleaner and had access to information from competing companies to Caldwell Construction that can be verified. Second, I'll analyze the company's financial movements in recent months to identify possible irregularities. Ben nodded. You'll have full access to the company files. Roger can't know about the investigation for now. Dad, this is a terrible betrayal against a loyal employee, Valerie protested. And if Roger is innocent, no one will be happier than me to find that out, Ben replied. But I can't ignore these coincidences. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Carmen went to answer it and returned with a worried expression. Mr. Caldwell, it's Mr. Roger. He said he had some important documents for you to sign. A tense silence filled the room. Detective Silver got up quickly. Can I hide in the study next door? I want to observe this meeting. Valerie, take Izzy upstairs, Ben instructed. And Izzy, if it's really him, don't let him see you. Dad, this is getting ridiculous, Valerie muttered, but obeyed. Ben took a deep breath and instructed Carmen to let Roger into the living room. When his accountant appeared at the door, smiling and carrying a folder of documents, Ben tried to see him in a new light. The 45-year-old man had graying hair, always wore well-pressed grey suits, and really smelled of menthol cigarettes. Ben, how are you feeling? You look a little pale. I'm better, thanks. What documents are these? Roger sat down in the armchair in front of the sofa and opened the folder. Contracts from the shopping centre construction need your urgent approval, and some checks for suppliers. As Roger explained each document, Ben discreetly observed his hands. On his left hand, between his thumb and forefinger, there was a white scar, exactly as Izzy had described. Roger, how did you get that scar on your hand? The accountant looked at his own hand, as if it were the first time he had seen it. Oh, that? Accident when I was a kid, cut with glass, he laughed nervously. Why the curiosity? Nothing much. The witness to my attack mentioned that the attacker had a similar mark on his hand. Roger was still for a few seconds, then returned to the papers. What a strange coincidence. Well, those scars are more common than you think. As Ben signed the documents, he noticed that Roger's hands were trembling slightly. After 15 years of partnership, he knew the accountant's habits well, and nervousness was not a normal characteristic. Upstairs, Valerie had left Izzy in the guest room and was coming down the stairs silently to listen to the conversation. When she reached the hall on the first floor, she could partially see the living room through the half-open door. Izzy had disobeyed instructions and had followed her. When she saw Roger in profile, her eyes widened with recognition and fear. She discreetly pulled Valerie's blouse and whispered, "It's him. It's the man who hurt Ben." Valerie looked at the girl, then at Roger in the living room, and for the first time since Izzy had arrived in her house, she completely believed what she was saying. The genuine fear in the child's eyes was impossible to fake. 10 minutes later, Roger said goodbye and left the house. Detective Silver emerged from the study with a somber expression. "Mr. Caldwell, I managed to discreetly photograph the scar on his hand. I'll compare it with the descriptions we have and start the financial investigation immediately. How much time do you need?" 2, maybe 3 weeks for a complete report, but I can have preliminary information in a few days. After the detective left, Ben slowly climbed the stairs to find Izzy and Valerie. He found them both in the girl's room, Valerie sitting on the bed, and Izzy drawing in a notebook that Carmen had given her. "Dad, I need to apologize," Valerie said without raising her eyes. When I saw the fear on her face when she saw Roger, I knew she was telling the truth. Izzy, are you absolutely sure it was him? I am. The scar, the smell, the voice, all the same. She showed the drawing she was doing, a man in a grey suit and a clear mark on his left hand. Ben, if he finds out I'm here, is he going to try to hurt me too? The question made Ben realize the seriousness of the situation. If Roger really was the attacker, and if he found out that Izzy could identify him, the girl would be in real danger. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you, Izzy, I promise. But even as he made that promise, Ben knew that he had just become involved in something much more dangerous and complex than he had imagined. And now he had a 4-year-old to protect in the middle of it all. That night, while Izzy was finally able to fall asleep, Roger Medeiros was in his apartment on the other side of town, making a call to an unregistered number. "We have a problem," he said to the voice on the other end of the line. "The child is alive and living with him. She saw me today and recognized me. She needs to be eliminated before she ruins everything." The next 3 days passed in an apparent calm that hid a growing tension. Ben had discreetly hired a security system for the house, and Carmen received specific instructions not to leave Izzy alone for a minute. The girl, noticing the change in the environment, became quieter and more observant, her big brown eyes always alert. Valerie had begun to spend more time at home, cancelling some social engagements with Cassio to stay close to Izzy. Surprisingly to herself, she found that she enjoyed the girl's company. Izzy was intelligent, asked interesting questions, and had a unique way of seeing the world that captivated the skeptical lawyer. "Valerie," asked Izzy one Thursday morning while they were having breakfast together, "why do you work so much? You never play?" The question caught Valerie off guard. Well, my work is important. I have responsibilities. Like Ben had before he got hurt? Similar, yes. But now he's happier staying home with us. Maybe you would be happy too if you worked less." Izzy's innocent observation planted a seed of reflection in Valerie's mind. In the last 3 days, she had laughed more than in the last 3 months, playing with the girl and helping her with her first reading lessons. Meanwhile, Detective Silver was working tirelessly on the investigation. On Wednesday evening, he called Ben with the initial findings. "Mr. Caldwell, I've uncovered some troubling information about Joanna Santos. She did indeed work as a cleaner in various businesses around Harmony Creek between 2018 and 2022. What's interesting is that all these establishments were direct competitors or suppliers of your company. That confirms she had access to privileged information." "Exactly. And furthermore, I found bank records showing that she received monthly deposits from an offshore account linked to a shell corporation. The amounts were always the same, $1,000 a month." Ben absorbed the information in silence. "What about my company's financial records?" "That's where the bigger problem lies. I've identified at least $200,000 in suspicious transfers over the last 8 months. Small amounts spread across different accounts, always approved by Roger Medeiros." $200,000. Ben felt a mixture of anger and betrayal. 15 years of trust, and he was stealing from me. "Mr. Caldwell, I need to warn you about something more serious. Last night I discreetly followed Roger after he left the office. He met with 2 men at a bar on the outskirts of town. I managed to photograph the meeting, and one of the men has a criminal record for extortion and threats." Ben's blood ran cold. "Threats? Silver? Is Izzy in real danger?" "Unfortunately, I believe so. I recommend you consider moving temporarily to a safe location while I gather enough evidence to present to the authorities." That night, Ben called an urgent family meeting. He, Valerie, Donna Carmen and Izzy gathered in the living room, and he carefully explained the situation. "Izzy, remember when you told me your mom got nervous after visits from the man with the scar?" "I remember. She always said he was dangerous, but she needed the money. We discovered that this man was paying your mother to get information about other companies, information he used to harm my business. Izzy processed this information with surprising maturity for her 4 years, so my mom did bad things for him. Your mom was in a very difficult situation, honey. Sometimes, when people are desperate, they make choices they wouldn't normally make. Valerie watched the conversation and was impressed by the gentle but honest way her father used to explain such a complex situation to a child. "Ben," Izzy said finally, "if that man finds out I can tell the truth about him, will he want to hurt me? I won't let that happen. But maybe it's best if we go somewhere else for a few days until things are sorted out." It was Donna Carmen who suggested the solution. "Mr. Caldwell, my sister has a country house in the Hamptons, quite isolated. It could be a temporary refuge." On Friday morning, as they packed discreetly, Izzy made a discovery that would change everything. She was helping Donna Carmen put away some books when she found a folder that had fallen behind the office bookcase. "Donna Carmen, what's this?" she asked, showing the folder full of papers. Donna Carmen examined the documents, and her face paled. "Izzy, call your father immediately." When Ben saw the contents of the folder, he understood that the situation was even more serious than he had imagined. They were photocopies of confidential contracts, bid proposals, and correspondence between his company and the city council, all dated within the last 2 years. "How did this get here?" he muttered. "Dad, look at this," Valerie said, picking up a sheet that was stuck to another. It was a handwritten note. R. Requested documents. Next payment as agreed. J. J for Joanna, Izzy whispered. "My mum brought these papers here." The revelation was devastating. Joanna had gained access to the Caldwell's home, probably as a cleaner or service provider, and had copied important documents. But why had she kept copies? Why hadn't she given everything to Roger? Maybe she was planning to protect herself, Detective Silver suggested when Ben called him immediately. It's common in cases of industrial espionage for informants to keep evidence as personal security. That means Joanna knew she was taking a risk? Most likely. And if she disappeared 2 years ago, it may have been because she found out Roger was planning to get rid of her. The implication was terrifying. If Roger had eliminated Joanna to protect his scheme, Izzy was in mortal danger for being the only witness able to connect him to the crimes. "Silver, change plans. We're not going to the Hamptons. It's too isolated. If Roger finds out where we are, we'll be trapped. What do you suggest?" "I'm going to use Izzy as bait." "Ben," Valerie stood up abruptly from her chair, "you can't put a child at risk." "Listen to the plan before you condemn me," Ben said calmly. "Silver, can you get police support for a controlled operation?" "With the evidence we have, yes. What are you thinking?" "We'll pretend we're leaving town, but we'll actually stay hidden in the house. When Roger tries to break in to look for evidence or Izzy, we'll be ready to capture him." "It's too dangerous," Donna Carmen protested. "More dangerous is staying on the run forever," Ben replied. "Roger has contacts, resources, and experience in eliminating threats. If we don't resolve this now, Izzy will never be truly safe." Izzy, who had listened to the whole conversation in silence, approached Ben. "If it's going to make the bad man get arrested, I want to help." "Izzy, you're very brave, but this could be dangerous." "I've already lived through dangerous things," she said with a sad wisdom. "And now I have you to protect me. Before I had nobody." The determination in the girl's voice convinced even Valerie. They spent the rest of the day planning the operation. Detective Silver would coordinate with the police. Ben would pretend to be resting in the master bedroom. Valerie and Donna Carmen would hide in the attic. And Izzy would stay in the guest room with an emergency device. "If something goes wrong," Ben instructed, "you press this button and scream as loud as you can. The police will be less than 2 minutes away." That night, they put on the show of leaving. They conspicuously loaded suitcases into the car, spoke loudly about going to a safe place, and left the house around 8 in the evening. But 15 minutes later, they returned silently through the back garden. The wait began. Hidden in their respective posts, they waited for Roger's move. Ben had left some lights on a timer to maintain the appearance that the house was normally occupied. Around 11 o'clock, Izzy saw shadows moving in the garden. Her heart raced, but she remembered the instructions. Observe everything carefully and only press the emergency button if there was real danger. Two men were approaching the house from the back. One of them was Roger, whom she recognized immediately by his bearing and the way he walked. The other was a larger, stronger man, carrying a tool that appeared to be a crowbar. They silently forced the kitchen door and entered the house. Izzy heard footsteps downstairs, low voices talking about searching the bedrooms first and eliminating any evidence. When the footsteps began to climb the stairs, Izzy pressed the emergency button and ran under the bed, exactly as she had agreed with Ben. 2 minutes later, the house was surrounded by police, and shouts of "Police, hands up!" echoed through every room. Roger and his accomplice were captured trying to escape through the office window. But Roger's arrest revealed only the tip of the iceberg of a much larger conspiracy, which would put the Caldwell family in even greater danger in the coming weeks. The Harmony Creek Police Department had never witnessed such a complex case. Chief Roberto Farias, an experienced man of 52 years, personally conducted the interrogation of Roger Medeiros. The accountant, still wearing the grey suit he had worn during the thwarted invasion, maintained an expression of defiance, even in handcuffs. "Roger, we have enough evidence to prosecute you for burglary, industrial espionage, and attempted homicide," said the chief, spreading photographs and documents on the table. "Your best option is to cooperate." "I want to talk to my lawyer," Roger replied coldly. "You're right. But you should know that your accomplice, Marcelo Santos, is already talking. According to him, you hired him to solve a problem related to a child who could identify you." For the first time, Roger showed nervousness. Marcelo Santos was a petty criminal with a record for robbery and threats, but apparently he didn't have enough loyalty to withstand police pressure. At the Caldwell's house, the family tried to process the events of the previous night. Ben was on the living room sofa, still feeling back pain that had intensified with the stress of the operation. Valerie served coffee for everyone, including Detective Silva, who had spent the early morning coordinating with the police. Izzy was quieter than usual, drawing in her notebook. Since the events of last night, she had only asked one question: "Can my mom come home now?" The question had broken the hearts of everyone present because they knew that most likely Joanna Santos would never come back. "Silva," Ben said, "what did you find out in Marcelo's interrogation?" "Disturbing information. Apparently Roger wasn't working alone. There's a larger industrial espionage network operating in the region, involving several construction companies and public contracts." Several companies. At least 4 direct competitors of Caldwell Construction. Roger coordinated the operation but received orders from someone hierarchically superior. Valerie stopped serving coffee. Superior-like? A boss from another company? Possibly. Marcelo mentioned meetings that took place monthly at a luxury hotel in New York City. Roger always came back from these meetings with specific instructions on what information to obtain and which companies to harm. The doorbell rang, interrupting the conversation. Donna Carmen answered it and returned with a worried expression. "Mr. Caldwell, there's a gentleman here who says he's a lawyer. He wants to talk about Roger Medeiros." The man who entered the room was elegant, wore an expensive suit, and carried an Italian leather briefcase. He introduced himself as Dr. Fernando Castillo, a criminal defense attorney from New York. "Mr. Caldwell, I represent Roger Medeiros. I've come to propose a deal." "What kind of deal?" asked Ben, suspicious. "My client is willing to reveal complete details about the industrial espionage operation in exchange for a reduced sentence and police protection." Detective Silva leaned forward. "Police protection? Is Roger threatened?" "Very threatened. The people he works for don't tolerate failures or exposure. His arrest last night must have caused panic in the organization. And what does that have to do with us? Asked Valerie. Dr. Castillo looked directly at Izzy, who was coloring a drawing at the coffee table. The girl is the main threat to the entire operation. She can identify Roger, and through him, the entire network can be dismantled. They will try to eliminate her at any cost. A tense silence filled the room. Donna Carmen instinctively moved closer to Izzy, as if to physically protect her from the lawyer's words. "What exactly is your client offering?" asked Ben. "Names, dates, financial details, methods of operation, everything needed to dismantle the network completely. But he needs guarantees that he will be protected. And in exchange, you agree not to prosecute him for attempted homicide. He pleads guilty only to industrial espionage and burglary." Detective Silva shook his head. "That's not our decision. The district attorney decides on plea deals." "I understand, but the Caldwell family's influence in the community could be persuasive." Ben rose slowly, ignoring the pain in his back. "Dr. Castillo, 2 hours ago your client tried to break into my house to harm a 4-year-old child. I don't care what information he has. I'm not making any deals." "Mr. Caldwell, you may not understand the seriousness of the situation. The organization behind Roger has resources and high-level contacts. They won't give up on the girl easily. Then we'll make it public. The more exposure, the harder it will be for them to act." The lawyer smiled coldly. "Exposure can be a double-edged sword, especially when it involves influential politicians and powerful businessmen." That last statement made everyone in the room alert. "Politicians?" asked Valerie. "The espionage operation wasn't just commercial. It involved manipulation of public bids, overbilling of municipal works, and directing of contracts. Some very well-known names are involved." Detective Silva took quick notes. "Dr. Castillo, your client needs to provide that information regardless of any deal. It's a matter of public interest." "My client needs to be alive to provide information, Detective. And at the moment, his life expectancy is very low if he remains in a regular prison." After the lawyer left, the Caldwell family gathered to discuss the situation. Izzy had been taken to her room by Donna Carmen, but before leaving, she made an observation that left everyone thinking. "Ben, that man in the expensive suit smelled just like the cologne that was in the house where I used to live. The same cologne that the man with the scar wore when he visited my mom." Izzy's observation added a new dimension to the mystery. If Dr. Fernando Castillo was connected in any way with Roger beyond the professional relationship of lawyer and client, then his presence there was no coincidence. "Silva," Ben said, "can you investigate this lawyer?" "I'm already on it mentally. Fernando Castillo is well known in New York legal circles. He mainly represents businessmen involved in corruption scandals." Valerie, who had remained thoughtful throughout the conversation, finally spoke up. "Dad, I need to tell you something that might be important." "What is it?" "Cassio, my boyfriend. In recent months, he's been asking strange questions about your company. He always said it was professional curiosity, but now—" "What kind of questions?" "About construction schedules, contract values, suppliers. And he always insisted that I come here more often, especially when you weren't around." Detective Silva straightened up in his chair. "Valerie, do you have any idea where Cassio gets information about bids before they're public? He always said he had well-placed contacts at city council and the state government." "Cassio Ferreira, right? Lawyer, 35 years old, office downtown?" "Exactly. How do you know?" "Because his name appeared 3 times in the documents we seized from Roger's apartment last night." The revelation hit Valerie like a punch. For 2 years, she had dated and trusted a man who was apparently spying on her own family. Worse still, she had unwittingly provided information that was used against her father. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "Valerie, you're not to blame for anything." Ben comforted her. "Cassio used you, manipulated your feelings. But I talked about the company, about you, about our routine. I made it easy for them. Izzy, who had silently come down the stairs and listened to part of the conversation, approached Valerie. Valerie, bad people always trick good people. My mom was tricked too. It's not your fault. The simple wisdom of the 4-year-old touched Valerie deeply, and she hugged her with tears in her eyes. At that moment, Ben's phone rang. It was Dr. Ed from the hospital with urgent news. Ben, I need to warn you about something important. A man was here this morning, asking questions about you and the little girl who was with you when you checked into the emergency room. What kind of questions? Her full name, if she had a family, where she was living now, said he was a social worker, but something didn't add up. I asked to see his credentials, and he left quickly. Ed, could you recognize him if you saw him again? Yes, I have a good memory for faces. Why? Because I think our situation just got a lot more complicated. When Ben hung up the phone, everyone in the room understood that Roger's arrest had only been the first move in a much more dangerous game. The real masterminds of the operation now knew exactly where to find Izzy, and apparently had the resources and determination to get to her. The battle to protect the girl who had become the center of the Caldwell family was just beginning, and the enemies were more powerful and organized than anyone had imagined. That night, as security reinforcements were installed at the house, Izzy made a drawing different from all the others. A house surrounded by high walls, with several people outside trying to get in, and a small family inside, holding hands, facing everything together. Saturday morning dawned cloudy in Harmony Creek, but the somber mood inside the Caldwell's house had little to do with the weather. Ben had spent the night awake, planning the next security measures with Detective Silver, while Valerie struggled between anger and guilt over the discovery about Cassio. Izzy, seemingly the calmest of all, played in the yard under the watchful eye of Donna Carmen and 2 discreetly positioned security guards. The girl had developed an early maturity that allowed her to understand the gravity of the situation without being paralyzed by fear. Around 10 in the morning, Cassio Ferreira appeared at the door of the house, holding a bouquet of white flowers and an expression of seemingly genuine concern. Donna Carmen, following Ben's instructions, made him wait at the entrance while she called Valerie. Val, my love, I heard on the radio that there were problems here last night, he said when she appeared at the door. Are you okay? And your father? Valerie observed him with new eyes, looking for signs of the manipulation she hadn't noticed before. Cassio was attractive, well-dressed, and had the gift of gab, characteristics that now seemed calculated instead of natural. We're all fine, thank you, she replied coldly. Can I come in? I brought flowers for you, and I wanted to know if I can help with anything. Actually, Cassio, there's something I need to ask you. Valerie left the house and closed the door behind her. In recent months, you've asked a lot of questions about my father's company. Why? Cassio hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough time for Valerie to confirm her suspicions. Professional interest, darling. You know I admire your father's work. Professional interest in specific construction schedules, in names of suppliers, in details of private contracts. Valerie, why these questions? You're acting strangely. Maybe because I found out that my boyfriend has connections with the man who tried to kill my father. Cassio's face changed completely. The mask of caring concern disappeared, replaced by a calculating coldness that Valerie had never seen before. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice sounded different now. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Roger Medeiros, industrial espionage, bid manipulation. Want me to continue? Cassio took a step closer, and for the first time in 2 years of relationship, Valerie felt fear of him. Valerie, you need to understand that this is bigger than your family. There are important interests at stake. Interests more important than a 4-year-old who was almost killed. The girl is a problem that needs to be solved. She knows too much. The words came out so naturally that Valerie needed a few seconds to process what she had heard. Her boyfriend, the man with whom she had planned a future, was talking coldly about solving the problem of a child. Cassio, you're talking about killing Izzy. I'm talking about protecting investments of millions of dollars, about projects that benefit the entire region, about progress that cannot be stopped by sentimentality. Valerie took a step back, horrified. You're a monster. I'm a practical man, and you should be a practical woman too. Cassio grabbed her arm tightly. Valerie, there's still time for you to make the right choice. Convince your father to hand over the girl. Say she ran away, that she went back to the streets. No one will look for an abandoned child. Take your hand off me, Valerie said, trying to break free. You don't understand the situation. This operation involves very powerful people. The mayor, the Secretary of Public Works, businessmen from New York. They're not going to allow a 4-year-old girl to destroy years of planning. And you, how long have you been part of this? Cassio smiled bitterly. Since the beginning of our relationship, darling. Why do you think I was interested in a lawyer who was the daughter of a businessman? Love? The revelation was like a stab. 2 years of relationship, wedding plans, moments of intimacy. It had all been a calculated farce to spy on her family. You never loved me, Valerie murmured. Love is a luxury that ambitious men can't afford. But I can offer something better, financial security. If you cooperate, you and your father can be part of the operation. The contracts you've lost in recent years can come back, multiplied. In exchange for Izzy. In exchange for silence. At that moment, the door of the house opened, and Ben appeared, leaning on a cane that he had started using because of the back pain. Detective Silver was right behind him. Cassio, Ben said calmly, I'm glad you showed up. We wanted to talk to you. Cassio released Valerie's arm and quickly regained his professional demeanor. Mr. Caldwell, I heard about what happened yesterday. I'm very sorry. I'm sure you are. Ben approached slowly. Especially because your plan didn't work. My plan? I don't understand. Of course you understand. Just as you understood when you asked specific questions about my company through Valerie. Just as you understood when you coordinated with Roger which information was most valuable. Detective Silver showed a folder with photographs. Cassio Ferreira, these are photos of you entering Roger Medeiros' apartment 3 times in the last 2 months. We also have phone records connecting you to the espionage network. Cassio looked around, assessing his options. The street was strangely empty for a Saturday morning, and he realized that there were probably undercover police officers strategically positioned. You don't know who you're messing with, he said, abandoning any pretense of innocence. This operation has high-level protection, much higher than a private detective and an interior businessman can imagine. Then help us understand, Ben said. Tell us about that protection. Cassio laughed humorlessly. You think I'm an amateur? I'm not going to turn anyone in without guarantees. It was at that moment that Izzy appeared at the upstairs window, observing the conversation in the front yard. When Cassio saw her, his eyes narrowed with a coldness that made Valerie regret every moment she had spent with him. The girl, he said, needs to disappear. It's the only way everyone gets out of this situation unscathed. Over my dead body, Ben replied. That can be arranged too. The threat was made with such naturalness that Detective Silver immediately made a discreet signal. Seconds later, 2 plainclothes police officers emerged from cars parked on the street and approached. Cassio Ferreira, you are under arrest for threatening, conspiracy, and industrial espionage, announced one of the officers. As he was being handcuffed, Cassio looked directly at Valerie. You made the wrong choice, Val. You all made the wrong choice. And you're going to pay for it. After Cassio's arrest, the Caldwell family gathered in the living room to process the events. Valerie cried silently, not only for the personal betrayal, but for the guilt of having inadvertently facilitated the crimes against her own family. Dad, how didn't I notice? How was I so blind? Because he was a professional, Ben consoled her. Men like Cassio are trained to manipulate feelings. It's not your fault. Izzy, who had come down to join the family, approached Valerie and held her hand. Valerie, you didn't know he was a bad person, but now you know, and that's the important thing. How can you forgive so easily, Izzy? How can you trust anyone after so much bad stuff? The girl thought for a moment before answering. Because you showed me that there are good people in the world. If I only thought about the bad people, I'd be too scared to love you. Izzy's simple wisdom deeply touched everyone in the room. Detective Silver, observing the scene, understood that he was witnessing something rare, a family that had strengthened through suffering instead of fragmenting. Mr. Caldwell, he said, with the arrests of Roger and Cassio, we've obtained valuable information. But I need to warn you that the investigation has revealed ramifications that go far beyond what we imagined. What did you find out? The espionage operation wasn't just local. It's part of a national scheme of manipulating public bids, involving dozens of companies in at least 6 states. And the masterminds. We're still investigating, but some very influential names have appeared in the documents seized. As long as she is alive and available to testify, the entire scheme is at risk. What do you recommend? 24-hour police protection, temporary change of address, and possibly entry into the witness protection program if the situation worsens. That night, as the family tried to adapt to the constant presence of security guards and the feeling of being hunted by powerful enemies, Izzy made a drawing that perfectly summarized their situation. A small girl surrounded by dark shadows, but holding the hands of 3 illuminated figures, Ben, Valerie, and Donna Carmen, who formed a protective circle around her. Politicians, businessmen, even some judges. Ben absorbed the information slowly. Silver, does that mean we're still in danger? Unfortunately, yes. Izzy remains the main witness able to identify the perpetrators of the operation. The drawing was taped to the refrigerator when, at 3 in the morning, everyone was awakened by the sound of glass breaking and heavy footsteps invading the house. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the house like a scream of alert. Ben woke up instantly, his youthful military experience causing his senses to sharpen immediately. The back pain was momentarily forgotten when he heard heavy footsteps on the ground floor and low voices coordinating movements. "Valerie," he whispered, running down the hallway to his daughter's room. "Wake up, we have to get out of here now." Valerie jumped out of bed, still stunned by sleep. "Dad, what? Intruders in the house. Grab only the essentials and come with me." Meanwhile, Donna Carmen had woken up to the noises and ran to Izzy's room. The girl was sitting on the bed, completely awake, as if she had been waiting for that moment. "Donna Carmen, are they bad men?" she asked with a calmness that surprised the housekeeper. "Yes, honey, we need to get out of here quickly." Izzy got up and grabbed only her beaded bracelet and a small teddy bear that Valerie had bought for her. "I'm ready." The 2 security guards, who were on night watch, were already in action. One of them had activated the silent alarm connected directly to the police, while the other coordinated the evacuation of the family through the back of the house. The operation had been planned exactly for this type of situation. "Mr. Caldwell, we have 4 armed men on the ground floor," security guard Paulo Henrique discreetly informed him through an earpiece communicator. "They know exactly where to look. It's not a random break-in." Ben immediately understood the implication. The intruders knew the floor plan of the house, knew where the bedrooms were, possibly even where the security system was located. They had detailed information that could only come from someone intimately familiar with the family's routine. The family quietly descended the service stairs that gave direct access to the kitchen. From there, they could exit through the back and reach the garage, where a car was always prepared for emergencies. But as they approached the kitchen door, they heard voices from outside as well. "Surround the entire property," said an authoritative male voice. "They can't have gone far." Ben signaled everyone to stop. They were cornered between the intruders inside the house and others in the outer garden. The evacuation plan had been compromised. It was Izzy who offered the solution. "Ben, there's a hole in the fence in the backyard, near the big tree. It's small, but we can get through." "How do you know that?" "I explored the whole house in the first few days. I always look for emergency exits." The answer revealed how the experience of living on the streets had developed survival instincts that could now save the entire family. Paulo Henrique confirmed that the area indicated by Izzy was clear of intruders. They moved carefully through the back of the property, avoiding the automatic garden lights and using the trees as cover. The opening in the fence was indeed small, clearly made by some animal over the years. Donna Carmen managed to get through with difficulty. Izzy passed easily, but Valerie and especially Ben, still limited by back injuries, had to force their way through. On the other side of the fence, they were on the vacant lot bordering a side street. Paulo Henrique had already positioned a discreet car there, following security protocols that provided for multiple escape routes. When they were all finally in the car, Ben looked back and saw his house, the home where he had raised Valerie, where he had built memories with his late wife, Laura, where in recent weeks he had discovered the joy of being a father figure to Izzy, being violated by men who would not hesitate to kill a child to protect their criminal interests. "Where are we going?" asked Valerie, hugging Izzy in the back seat. "Safe house 50 miles from here," replied Paulo Henrique, "a location that even the local police don't know." During the drive on the dark road, Detective Silva called Ben's cell phone. "Mr. Caldwell, we received the alarm. Are you safe?" "We are, thank God." "What did you find in the house?" 4 men, all armed, all professionals. They weren't common criminals. They had sophisticated equipment and detailed knowledge of the property. When the police arrived, they surrendered without resistance. Without resistance? That's strange. That's what I thought too. Professional criminals don't surrender easily unless they have specific orders not to create a bigger confrontation. The implication was disturbing. The intruders hadn't gone to the house to kidnap or hurt the family. They had gone to send a message, to demonstrate that they could reach them whenever they wanted, wherever they wanted. "Silva, were you able to identify the intruders?" "Not officially yet, but they appear to be professional mercenaries, the kind of people you hire for specific services when you have a lot of money and few scruples." The safe house was on a secluded rural property, surrounded by native forest and accessible only by a narrow dirt road. It was simple, but comfortable, with 3 bedrooms, a large living room and a well-equipped kitchen. More importantly, it had an encrypted communication system and a discreet but efficient security perimeter. When they arrived, it was almost 5 in the morning. Izzy, who had remained brave throughout the escape, finally let the fatigue and fear show. She sat on the living room sofa and began to cry silently. "Why do these people want to hurt me?" she asked. "I just want to be with you." Ben sat next to her, ignoring the pain in his back, and hugged her. "Because you're very brave and very smart. You saw things that bad people didn't want anyone to see. But I won't tell anyone if they stop trying to hurt me." "Unfortunately, honey, it doesn't work that way. People who do wrong things are always afraid of being discovered, even when we promise not to tell." Valerie watched the scene and felt a mixture of anger and determination growing in her chest. In recent days, she had lost not only a boyfriend, but also her naivety about the world. She had discovered that there were people willing to hurt an innocent child to protect their criminal business. "Dad, we can't live on the run forever. Izzy deserves a normal life, a safe childhood." "I know, Valerie, but first we need to find out how far this conspiracy goes." Donna Carmen, ever practical, had started preparing coffee and sandwiches for everyone. The domestic routine, even in extraordinary circumstances, offered a bit of normalcy amid the chaos. Around 7 in the morning, Detective Silva arrived at the safe house with news that completely changed the course of the investigation. He brought with him a folder full of documents and a grave expression that indicated important discoveries. "Mr. Caldwell, we interrogated the 4 intruders during the early morning. One of them decided to cooperate in exchange for protection." "And what did he say?" "The operation is much bigger than we imagined. We're not just talking about local industrial espionage. It's a national scheme of bid manipulation that moves more than $100 million a year." Ben struggled to assimilate the number. 100 million. And Izzy, as it happens, is the only living person who can connect the local perpetrators, Roger and Cassio, with the masterminds in New York. "How the only living person?" Detective Silver hesitated before answering. "Mr. Caldwell, we have reason to believe that Joanna Santos, Izzy's mother, was murdered 2 years ago when she tried to leave the operation." The silence that followed was heavy. Donna Carmen covered her mouth with her hands, Valerie hugged Izzy tighter, and Ben felt a growing fury burning in his chest. "Are you sure about this?" The intruder who cooperated confirmed it. Joanna had collected evidence as personal security, just as we suspected. When she tried to use that evidence to free herself from the scheme, she was eliminated. Izzy had listened to the conversation in silence. At 4 years old, she didn't fully understand the implications, but she understood enough to know that her mother wouldn't be coming home. "Is my mom in heaven now?" she asked in a small voice. Ben looked at that extraordinary girl who had lost everything but still managed to ask questions with hope instead of despair. "Yes, honey. Your mom is in heaven and she's very proud of how brave you are. Does she know that now I have a new family?" "I'm sure she knows, and I'm sure she was happy when she saw that you found people who love you." Detective Silver continued his report. "There's more. The intruder said that the order came directly from New York. A businessman named Armando Bressan, owner of a construction conglomerate, is coordinating the entire national operation." "Bressan," said Valerie, raising her head sharply. "Dad, doesn't that name sound familiar?" Ben frowned, trying to remember. "Bressan. Yes, he tried to buy our company 3 years ago, made an offer well above market value, but I refused." "Now we know why," said Silver. "He wanted to incorporate Caldwell Construction into his scheme. When you refused, they decided to destroy it from within." The revelation completed the puzzle. Armando Bressan had not accepted Ben's refusal and had orchestrated a long-term plan to ruin the company, incorporate its contracts, and eliminate any honest competition in the region. "Silver, does this Bressan have enough political protection to be beyond the reach of justice?" "Most likely. Men like him don't get rich being careless with their connections." It was at that moment that Izzy made an observation that changed everything again. "Detective Silver, the man you said sent the bad men, is he tall? Does he wear glasses? And does he have a deep voice?" "How do you know that description, Izzy?" "Because he visited my mom once. She was very scared of him. Said he was the boss of all the bosses." The revelation that Izzy had personally seen Armando Bressan completely transformed the nature of the case. She wasn't just a witness to Roger's activities, she was the only person who could identify the mastermind of the entire criminal operation. And that made her more valuable, but also infinitely more dangerous to the criminals than anyone had imagined. The second week at the safe house brought a strange routine to the Caldwell family. During the day, they tried to maintain an appearance of normalcy. Donna Carmen taught Izzy to read, Valerie worked remotely on less sensitive cases, and Ben coordinated the construction business by phone. But during the night, the weight of the situation became unbearable. Detective Silver made daily visits, always bringing disturbing updates on the investigation. That Tuesday, he arrived with a particularly somber expression. "Mr. Caldwell, we have problems. Roger Medeiros was found dead in his cell last night." The silence that followed was deafening. Ben rose slowly from the chair where he was reading to Izzy. "How?" "Apparently suicide, hanging with sheets, but the forensics found signs that suggest it may have been forced. And Cassio, transferred to a maximum security prison in New York City last night. They claimed it was for his own protection. Valerie, who was working on her laptop at the kitchen table, approached. Silva, does that mean Armando Bressan is eliminating loose ends? That's the most likely interpretation. With Roger dead and Cassio isolated, Izzy has become even more important as a witness. Izzy, who was playing on the floor with wooden blocks that Donna Carmen had found in the house, looked up. Did the tall man with glasses tell them to hurt Mr. Roger? The girl's innocent question revealed how she was understanding the gravity of the situation better than the adults imagined. Possibly, honey, Silva replied gently. That's why we need to keep you very safe. I know, but I'm tired of being hidden. I want to go to school, make friends, play in the park. The simple desire for a normal childhood broke everyone's heart in the room. Ben knelt beside her. Soon you'll be able to do all that, Izzy. I promise. When? It was a question that none of them knew how to answer. In the afternoon of that same day, the situation took an unexpected turn. Dr. Fernando Castillo, the lawyer who had represented Roger, appeared at the precinct with a proposal that reached them through Silva. Castillo wants to negotiate directly with you, the detective informed them. Says he has information that can resolve the whole situation. What kind of information? He didn't want to reveal it over the phone. He insists on a face-to-face meeting. Ben immediately suspected something. Silva, it could be a trap. I agree. But he offered to come here unarmed, accompanied only by you and me. Said he has something that may be of specific interest to Izzy. The mention of the girl made Ben hesitate. Something related to her mother? Possibly. He said Joana Santos left something for her daughter before she died. After much debate, they decided to accept the meeting, but with extreme precautions. Doctor. Castillo would come alone, be searched, and the conversation would take place on the porch of the house, away from Izzy. When the lawyer arrived in the late afternoon, his appearance had changed drastically since their last meeting. He was visibly nervous, with deep dark circles under his eyes and rumpled clothes. He looked like a man under extreme pressure. Mr. Caldwell, he said after the security formalities, I want to make a deal. What kind of deal? Complete information about Armando Bressan's operation in exchange for protection for me and my family. Silva leaned forward. Dr. Castillo, why this sudden change? Last week, you were defending Roger. Because Roger was alive last week, he replied bitterly. Now I understand that Bressan doesn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who becomes inconvenient. And what does that have to do with Izzy? Castillo took a small box from his inside jacket pocket. Joana Santos gave me this 3 days before she disappeared. Asked me to give it to her daughter if something happened to her. Ben took the box carefully. Inside, there was a small golden key and a piece of paper with numbers written by hand. What is this? The key to a safe deposit box at National Bank, downtown New York branch. Joanna kept there all the evidence she collected during the years working for Bressan. The revelation was like lightning. Joanna hadn't just collected information. She had systematically documented and kept evidence that could bring down the entire operation. Why didn't you say this before? Because while Roger was alive, I still believed I could negotiate a way out without turning in Bressan. Now I know he'll kill all of us if necessary. Silva examined the paper with numbers. Are these access codes? Yes. Joanna was smarter than anyone imagined. She knew they would eventually try to get rid of her, so she created a life insurance policy for her daughter. Ben looked at the key in his hands. That small metal object could be Izzy's salvation, but it could also put her in even greater danger if Bressan discovered its existence. Doctor, Castillo, how long has Bressan known about this safe deposit box? He suspects that Joanna kept evidence, but he doesn't know where or how to access it. The only ones who knew were me, Joanna, and now you. And if we go to New York to get that evidence, what guarantees do we have that it's not a trap? Castillo took another envelope from his pocket. Because I brought a sample of what's in the safe deposit box. A recording I personally made of Bressan ordering Joanna's elimination. Silva took the envelope and examined the small digital recorder inside it. You have a recording of Bressan ordering a murder. I do. And there's much more in the safe deposit box. Documents, photographs, financial records, names of politicians involved. Joanna documented everything for 5 years. The dimension of the discovery was overwhelming. If the vault really contained comprehensive evidence about Bressan's operation, it could not only protect Izzy, but dismantle the entire criminal network. But it also meant they'd have to go to New York City, exposing themselves to even greater dangers. "Dr. Castillo," said Ben finally, "why did you decide to help us now? What changed?" The lawyer lowered his eyes. "I have a daughter Izzy's age. Last night, 2 men showed up at her school, asking questions. Bressan was threatening me through my own family." "And you're sure this evidence is enough to take down Bressan?" "I'm absolutely certain." Joanna was methodically careful. There are recordings of him ordering hits, documents proving bribes to dozens of politicians, records of rigged bids in 6 states. Detective Silva made some quick notes. "Dr. Castillo, I'll verify your information. If it's true, we can organize an operation to access the vault. There's only one condition," said the lawyer. "Izzy needs to be present to open the vault. The bank requires the presence of the legal beneficiary, and Joanna registered her daughter as the only authorized person. The condition changed everything. It wouldn't be possible to access the evidence without exposing Izzy to the dangers of a trip to New York City, a city where Bressan had virtually unlimited control and resources." After Castillo left, the family gathered to decide what to do. Izzy, who had overheard part of the conversation from her bedroom window, came downstairs and joined the discussion. "You're talking about my mom," she said simply. "Yes, honey. We found out your mom kept some important things for you. Things that can make the bad men stop chasing us? Possibly." Izzy thought for a long moment, with the seriousness she had developed after everything she'd been through. "Then I want to go get them. I want to see what my mom left for me." "Izzy, it could be very dangerous. More dangerous than staying hidden forever? More dangerous than you not being able to go home because of me." The 4-year-old's simple logic exposed the reality they were all avoiding facing. They couldn't live on the run indefinitely. At some point, they'd have to take a stand and fight. "If we go," said Ben, "it'll be with full police protection and every possible precaution." "And if we don't go?" asked Valerie. "We keep running until Bressan decides it's easier to eliminate us than to chase us." That night, while Izzy was sleeping, Ben made the most difficult decision of his life. They would go to New York City. They would retrieve the evidence Joanna had left for her daughter, and they would finally put an end to the situation. But what none of them knew was that Armando Bressan had already found out about the vault. And he was preparing a reception in New York City that would turn the search for the evidence into the most dangerous trap the Caldwell family had ever faced. The next morning, 2 black cars with New York license plates were seen circling Harmony Creek, their occupants discreetly asking about a family with a 4-year-old girl. The trip to New York City was planned with military precision. 2 cars followed different routes, with Izzy traveling in the second vehicle along with Ben and 2 security agents, while Valerie and Donna Carmen followed in the first as a distraction. Detective Silva coordinated the entire operation through a support convoy that maintained a safe distance. During the 4-hour drive, Izzy remained quiet most of the time, watching the landscape change from green mountains to the concrete and steel of the metropolis. When they finally saw the first buildings of New York City, she asked a question that surprised Ben. "Did my mom live here before she had me?" "I don't know, honey." "Why do you ask?" "Because she always talked about a big city with buildings that touched the sky. She said she would one day come back to get something important she had left there." Izzy's observation added a new layer of meaning to the mission. Joanna hadn't just hidden evidence in New York City. She had returned to the city of her origin to protect her daughter's future. The National Bank was located in the downtown area, an imposing 20-story building with tight security and a constant flow of executives and important clients. The vault they were looking for was located in the basement, in a high-security area that required multiple authorizations for access. "Mr. Caldwell," said the bank manager, an elegant 50-year-old man named Dr. Maurice Andrade, "I need to verify all the documents before authorizing access to Vault 1247. Ben presented the documentation he had provided, Izzy's birth certificate, proof of temporary custody, and the special court authorization that Silva had obtained through the district attorney's office. "And the child needs to be present during the opening?" asked Dr. Andrade, looking at Izzy with a worried expression. "Those are the instructions left by the original holder, Joanna Santos. Only the beneficiary can authorize the opening." While they waited for the final verification of the documents, Izzy approached a large window overlooking the street. Below, the movement of people and cars created a hypnotic pattern that relaxed her. It was then that she saw something that made her blood run cold. "Ben," she called softly, "the tall man with glasses is down there." Ben quickly approached the window. On the sidewalk in front of the bank, casually talking to two men in suits, was Armando Bressan. Even from a distance, Izzy had recognized him perfectly. "Silva," Ben said urgently through the communicator, "we have a problem. Bressan is here." "How is that possible? We took every precaution." "He must have found out about the vault. He's probably been monitoring the bank for days." Dr. Andrade, noticing the sudden tension, approached. "Gentlemen, is there a problem?" "We need to access the vault immediately," Ben said, "and we need an alternative exit from the building. Sir, I cannot expedite the security procedures, and we don't have authorized alternative exits for the basement." It was at that moment that Izzy made a decision that surprised everyone. She approached the manager with the determination she had developed during her years of survival. "Sir, my mom kept important things down there to protect me from bad men. Now those men are here, and they want to hurt me. Please, help me." The sincerity in the girl's voice touched Dr. Andrade in an unexpected way. He looked out the window, saw the men on the street, and something in his paternal instinct was activated. "Come with me," he said, abandoning the regular protocols. "Let's get this done quickly." The bank's basement was a maze of fluorescent-lit corridors with steel-clad walls. Hundreds of vaults of different sizes were arranged in rows, each protected by high-security electronic locks. Vault 1247 was medium-sized, located in a special section that required two simultaneous keys, one from the bank and one from the client. Izzy held the small golden key her mother had left as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. "Izzy," said Dr. Andrade gently, "when I count to 3, you turn your key at the same time as I turn mine, okay?" "Okay. 1, 2, 3. The vault opened with a soft click, revealing its contents that would change everything. Inside were meticulously organized folders, dozens of CDs and flash drives, photographs, and a sealed letter with the name Izzy, written by hand. Ben quickly began examining the documents. There were forged contracts, records of illegal payments, photographs of secret meetings between Bressan and influential politicians, and recordings of compromising conversations. Joanna had systematically documented 5 years of crimes. "My God," he murmured, "this could take down dozens of powerful people." Izzy took the letter with her name and opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph of her as a baby in Joanna's arms, and a few lines written in her mother's careful handwriting. "My dearest Izzy, if you are reading this, it means something has happened to me. But it also means you have found good people to take care of you. Keep these things very carefully. They can protect you and other children from men who only think about money. Mom will always love you, even far away. Always be brave." Tears rolled down the girl's face as she held the photograph. It was the first time she'd seen a picture of herself with her mother, and the first time she had read words written especially for her. At that moment, Silver spoke urgently through the communicator. "Ben, get out of there immediately. Bresson entered the bank with 4 men. They're heading to the basement." Panic gripped the group. Doctor Andrade, understanding the gravity of the situation, made a courageous decision. "Follow me," he said. "There's an emergency exit that connects to the neighboring building." As they ran through the basement corridor carrying the evidence, they heard the elevator opening and authoritative voices echoing through the steel walls. Bresson had arrived with his men and was heading directly to Vault 1247. The emergency exit was a heavy door that led to a maintenance tunnel connecting the 2 buildings. Dr. Andrade opened it with a special key and signaled them to pass quickly. "Dr. Andrade," said Ben, "you could get in trouble for helping us." "Mr. Caldwell, I have a granddaughter the same age as this little girl. I couldn't sleep knowing that I abandoned her when she needed help." On the other side of the tunnel, they emerged in the basement of a commercial building. Silver was waiting for them with 2 cars, engines running, ready for a quick getaway. "Did you get the evidence?" he asked. "We got it," Ben replied, showing the folders, "and much more than we expected." But as they were getting into the cars, Bresson and his men appeared at the entrance to the tunnel. The criminal businessman, seeing that they had lost the evidence, did something desperate. "Stop!" he shouted. "You don't understand what you're doing. This evidence will destroy projects that benefit millions of people." Ben stopped and turned to face him. "Projects built with blood and corruption, Bresson. Projects that cost the life of an innocent mother. Joanna Santos wasn't innocent. She was an extortionist, a blackmailer. She was a desperate woman trying to protect her daughter from men like you." Bresson looked directly at Izzy, who was in the back seat of one of the cars. "Girl, you don't know the harm you're causing. Your mother tricked a lot of people, stole information that wasn't hers." Izzy got out of the car and walked to Bresson, surprising everyone with her courage. She stopped a few feet from him and said in a firm voice that didn't match her 4 years, "My mum tried to stop working for you. You sent bad men to hurt her. Now you want to hurt me too. But I have family now, and they're going to protect me." The girl's simple and direct response left Bresson visibly disconcerted. He had spent years dealing with corrupt politicians, unscrupulous businessmen, and experienced criminals. He wasn't prepared to face the brutal honesty of a child. "Silver," said Ben, "I think it's time for us to go." As the cars drove away, leaving Bresson and his men behind, Izzy held tightly to the photograph of her mother and the folders with evidence. For the first time since she had been abandoned on the streets 2 years ago, she felt that she was doing something that honored the memory of the woman who had loved and protected her until the end. But the victory in New York City would be just the first step in a much larger battle, which would test all the limits of the Caldwell family's courage and determination in the next and decisive chapters of their journey. The return from New York City should have been a moment of relief, but the atmosphere in the car was charged with tension. The evidence from Joanna's vault was safe in a sealed folder next to Ben, but everyone knew that Armando Bresson would not give up easily. Men like him didn't get to power by accepting defeats. During the trip, Detective Silva coordinated by phone with the federal prosecutor's office, reporting the success of the operation and the quality of the evidence collected. The recordings Joanna had made were crystal clear, the documents were unquestionable, and the photographs clearly showed meetings that should never have happened. "Mr. Caldwell," Silva said after a long conversation, "Federal Prosecutor Miguel Santana wants to meet with us today. He said that with this evidence, he can immediately begin the arrests of the entire network." "Including Bresson?" "Especially Bresson. The recordings Joanna made of him are enough for a conviction for racketeering, corruption, and," Silva hesitated, looking at Izzy, "for ordering the elimination of witnesses." Izzy, who was quietly playing with the photograph of her mother, raised her eyes. "Does that mean the bad man is going to jail?" "It means that justice will decide what to do with him," Ben replied carefully. "And will I have to talk to judges about what I saw?" The question brought up a concern that everyone had avoided discussing. Izzy, despite being a minor, would likely be called to testify about her memories of the meetings between Bressan and her mother. "Maybe, honey, but if that happens, we'll always be by your side." "I'm not afraid to tell the truth," she said, with a determination that continued to impress the adults. "My mom always said that lying only makes things worse." When they arrived in Harmony Creek, they discovered that the town had been transformed into a judicial battleground. Journalists from New York City had arrived during the afternoon, apparently alerted by leaks about a major anti-corruption operation that would involve important names. The Caldwell's house was surrounded by news vans, and Donna Carmen had locked all the doors and closed all the curtains. The housekeeper greeted them with an expression of panic. "Mr. Caldwell, people have been calling every 5 minutes. Journalists, lawyers, people saying they represent important politicians. They all want to talk to the little girl." Ben immediately understood what was happening. Bressan was using his contacts to publicly pressure the family before the evidence could be officially presented to justice. "Carmen, turn off the phone. Don't answer anyone." That night, while Izzy finally slept in her own room after 2 weeks in the safe house, the family gathered for a difficult conversation. Valerie had spent the day analyzing the legal implications of the evidence, and her conclusions were worrying. "Dad, this evidence is explosive. There are recordings compromising 3 senators, 2 governors, dozens of mayors, and at least 6 major businessmen besides Bressan. Is that good or bad? It can be both. On one hand, it ensures that Bressan and the entire network will be prosecuted. On the other hand, all these powerful people have a lot to lose and unlimited resources to protect themselves." Detective Silva, who had spent the night coordinating the security of the house, confirmed Valerie's fears. "We've already identified suspicious movements in the town. Cars with out-of-state plates, people asking discreet questions about you, hotels with sudden bookings from guests who paid in cash." "Bressan is organizing one last attempt?" asked Ben. "It's very likely. He knows that once the evidence is officially delivered to the federal prosecutor's office tomorrow, there's no going back. Tonight might be his only chance." The reality was grim. They had won the battle in New York City, but the war was not over. Around 2 in the morning, the garden's motion sensors were activated. Silva, who was on duty in the living room, woke Ben immediately. "We have movement on the perimeter. At least 6 men approaching the house from different directions. This time, they won't find the house empty," said Ben, checking the security system he had installed after the first attack. "Silva, activate the emergency protocol." The emergency protocol was a plan they had developed in case Bressan attempted a final attack. All the evidence had already been digitized and sent to 3 different secure locations, including the offices of the federal prosecutor's office in Washington, D.C. The family's safety was now the priority. Valerie woke Izzy and Donna Carmen, taking them to the fortified room upstairs, a room that Ben had reinforced with steel and equipped with independent communication. There, they would be safe while he and Silva dealt with the intruders. "Ben," said Izzy before going up, "if something happens to you, who will take care of me?" "Nothing's going to happen to me, honey. And if it did, Valerie and Donna Carmen would always take care of you. Promise?" "I promise." But as Izzy climbed the stairs with Valerie, they both knew that some promises are harder to keep than others. Bressan's men were different from the previous intruders. These were military professionals, moving with tactical coordination and state-of-the-art equipment. They weren't there to intimidate. They were there to definitively solve the Caldwell family problem. Silva coordinated the defense through the security monitors, while Ben, armed for the first time in his life, positioned himself in the office overlooking the front yard. Ben, they're not trying to get in, Silver observed. They're methodically surrounding the house. What does that mean? It means they don't want to get in. They want to keep us trapped here until they resolve the situation in their own way. The implication was terrifying. Bressan's men weren't planning a kidnapping or an invasion. They were planning to eliminate all the witnesses at once. It was at that moment that Izzy did something that no one expected. She quietly escaped from the fortified room, went downstairs, and headed to the front porch of the house. "Izzy!" Valerie shouted when she realized the girl had disappeared. "Where are you?" "I'm here," she replied calmly from the porch. "I want to talk to them." Ben ran to the porch, desperate, but stopped when he saw the scene. Izzy was standing on the illuminated porch, visible to all the men positioned in the garden, but they had stopped their movements. "Izzy, what are you doing?" Ben whispered. "I'm going to talk to them," she said with a serenity that didn't match her age. "I'm going to explain that we just want to live in peace. Honey, these men didn't come to talk. Everyone can talk, Ben. My mum taught me that." Before anyone could stop her, Izzy walked to the edge of the porch and spoke loudly to the dark garden. "I know you're out there. I know the man with glasses sent you here to hurt me. But I'm only 4 years old. I didn't do anything wrong." A surreal silence took over the property. The men trained to eliminate witnesses found themselves face to face with a child who was confronting them with absolute honesty. "My mom kept papers that prove you did bad things, but she only did it to protect me. Now I have a new family that protects me too. Why do you want to hurt people who just want to be at peace?" From somewhere in the garden, a voice answered, rough but hesitant. "Girl, you don't understand. This is about grown-up stuff." "Yes, I do. It's about powerful men who don't want to go to jail, but hurting children isn't going to solve your problems." What happened in the next few minutes would change everything once again. The men who had been sent to definitively silence the witnesses found themselves unable to fulfill their mission when confronted with the innocent courage of a 4-year-old girl who had survived 2 years on the streets and still managed to believe in the goodness of people. Slowly, one by one, the men began to move away from their attack positions, not because they were defeated by superior forces, but because they were defeated by something much more powerful. The conscience awakened by a child who had treated them as human beings capable of making the right choice. When the last man disappeared into the darkness, Izzy turned to Ben and said simply, "Can we go to sleep now?" It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of a victory that no adult had managed to achieve through violence or strategy, the victory of humanity over brutality. The 3 months that followed the night Izzy disarmed Bressan's assassins were a roller coaster of events that transformed not only the lives of the Caldwell family, but the entire political and business structure of the region. Joanna Santos's evidence triggered the largest anti-corruption operation in the history of upstate New York. Armando Bressan was arrested in a joint operation by the FBI the very next morning as he was trying to board a flight to Uruguay with false documents and 2 suitcases full of cash. The image of him being handcuffed at LaGuardia Airport occupied the front page of every newspaper in the country. But what most impressed the public was the story of the 4-year-old girl who had survived on the streets, witnessed crimes, and finally helped dismantle a national criminal network. Izzy involuntarily became a symbol of resistance and courage. "Dad, I don't like seeing my picture in the newspapers," said Izzy one Thursday morning as they were having breakfast in the kitchen. Donna Carmen had tried to hide the newspapers, but the girl had found them anyway. "I know, honey, but it will pass soon, and we'll go back to our normal life." "Normal like what?" "Normal like going to school, making friends, playing in the park, all the things a girl your age should do." School had been a point of intense debate between Ben and Valerie. Izzy had missed crucial years of formal education, but her natural intelligence and extraordinary memory made her absorb knowledge with impressive speed. "Miss Izzy," said Donna Carmen, who had assumed the role of informal tutor. "Today we're going to learn about bigger numbers. Do you already know how to count to 100? "I know up to 1,000, Izzy replied proudly, "and I know how to add and subtract." Valerie, who was working at the kitchen table with papers from the office spread out, smiled as she listened to the conversation. In recent months, she had drastically reduced her working hours to spend more time at home. The discovery of Cassio's betrayal had made her completely rethink her priorities. "Izzy, would you like to meet other children your age?" asked Valerie. "I'd really like to. But will they know who I am because of the newspapers?" "Some may know, but most kids only care if you're fun to play with." The phone rang, interrupting the morning conversation. It was Detective Silver, with news about the trial that had been scheduled for the following week. "Mr. Caldwell, the judge has decided that Izzy will need to testify, but it will be in a closed session, with only the essential people present. How is she dealing with the prospect of having to talk about everything again?" "Actually, she's more prepared than most adults. Yesterday, when we talked about the deposition, she said she wanted to tell the truth so that other boys and girls don't go through what she went through." Ben hung up the phone with a heavy heart. Izzy had matured in ways that no child should have to mature, but at the same time, she maintained a purity and hope that impressed everyone who knew her. In the week of the trial, Harmony Creek turned into a kind of media circus. Journalists from all over the country had arrived to cover the case that was being called Operation Little Giant, a reference to the crucial role that Izzy had played in the discovery of the crimes. "Ben," said Izzy on the morning she was supposed to testify, "I'm nervous. It's normal to be nervous. I'm nervous too. But will you be there with me? I'll be in the room, but I won't be able to speak for you. You'll have to tell your own story. What if I forget something important? Then you say you don't remember. There's no problem with that. The important thing is to always tell the truth." The Harmony Creek courthouse had never seen a movement like that. Dozens of lawyers, prosecutors, journalists, and onlookers crowded the hallways. But when Izzy arrived, hand in hand with Ben and Valerie, the murmur visibly diminished. The girl wore a simple blue dress that Donna Carmen had bought especially for the occasion, and she carried in one of her hands her beaded bracelet, the only asset that remained from her previous life. Judge Roberto Mendonça, an experienced 60-year-old man, had presided over hundreds of complex cases, but he had never conducted a deposition of a 4-year-old child in a case of such national importance. "Izzy," he said gently, when she sat in the special chair they had provided so she could reach the microphone. "Do you know why you're here today?" "Yes, I do. To tell the truth about the men who did bad things." "And do you promise to tell only the truth?" "I promise. My mom always said that lying only makes things worse." During the next 2 hours, Izzy reported her story with a clarity and precision that impressed everyone in the room. She spoke about her life on the streets, about Rogerio's visits to her mother, about the meeting with Bressan, about the attack on Ben, about everything she had witnessed. When Bressan's defense lawyer tried to confuse her with complex questions, she responded with the direct honesty that had become her trademark. "Doctor," she said, when the lawyer suggested that her memories might be distorted by time, "I remember everything because I had to learn to remember to survive on the street. If a child on the street forgets where there is food or where there is danger, she can die." The answer not only refuted the questioning, but also reminded everyone in the room of the extraordinary circumstances that had shaped that girl. When they finally finished the questions, the judge did something unusual. He asked to speak to Izzy in private, with only Ben present. "Izzy, you've been through very difficult things for a girl your age. How do you feel now?" "I feel safe," she replied without hesitation. "I have a family who loves me, and a house where I can sleep without fear." "And what do you want for the future?" The question made Izzy think for a long moment. "I want to go to school, learn to read better, maybe have a little sister to play with." The judge smiled. A little sister? Valerie said that maybe one day she and Daddy... Izzy stopped, blushing. Ben isn't my real daddy, but I like to think he is. And does he like being your daddy? Izzy looked at Ben, who was fighting back tears. I think so. He takes care of me as if I were his real daughter. After the deposition, the family gathered in the car to go home. Izzy was visibly tired, but also relieved. Is it over? She asked. The hard part is over, Valerie replied. Now the judges will decide what happens to the bad men. What if they decide to let the bad men go free? They won't decide that, said Ben with conviction. The evidence your mother kept is very strong, and your testimony was perfect. 3 weeks later, the verdict was announced. Armando Bressan was sentenced to 25 years in prison for racketeering, corruption, money laundering, and aggravated homicide. Another 23 defendants received sentences ranging from 8 to 15 years. When the news reached them, Izzy was in the backyard playing with a new doll she had received from Donna Carmen. Ben called her into the house. Izzy, I have important news for you. Good or bad? Very good. The man who sent people to hurt your mother is going to be in jail for a long time. You never have to be afraid of him again. Izzy processed the information in silence for a few moments. Then she asked a question that surprised everyone. And now, can I visit my mum's grave? The question revealed that, despite all the forced maturity, Izzy was still a 4-year-old child who missed her mother and needed a place to process her loss. Of course you can, honey. We'll arrange that. That afternoon, for the first time since it had all begun, the Caldwell family felt truly free. The nightmare was over, justice had been served, and they could finally focus on what really mattered, building a happy and normal life for the extraordinary girl who had changed their lives forever. But there was still one last surprise waiting for them, a final revelation that would give the perfect closure to Izzy's journey toward her new family. 6 months after the trial, the Caldwell family's life had finally found the peaceful rhythm that everyone had dreamed of during the months of persecution and fear. Izzy, now 5 years old, attended Harmony Creek Elementary, where she had quickly become one of the most beloved students due to her unique combination of precocious intelligence and genuine kindness. On that Saturday morning, especially sunny for Harmony Creek standards, the family was preparing for an event that Izzy had been looking forward to for weeks, the visit to her mother, Joanna Santos's grave. The municipal cemetery had been recently renovated, and they had finally managed to locate where her mother had been buried 3 years earlier. Izzy, are you sure you want to do this today? Asked Ben, watching the girl carefully choose the flowers they would take, white daisies, Joanna's favorites according to her fragmented memories. I'm sure. I want to tell my mom about you, about school, about how happy I am now. Her voice carried a serenity that continued to impress everyone who knew her. And I want to thank her for keeping those papers that protected us. Valerie, who in recent months had completely transformed, leaving aside the ambitious lawyer to become a dedicated maternal figure, approached with a small wrapped box. Izzy, I have a surprise for you before we go. The girl's eyes sparkled with curiosity. What kind of surprise? One that will make this day even more special. Valerie handed over the box with a mysterious smile. Inside the box were official documents with golden seals and blue ribbons. Izzy, who already knew how to read simple words, tried to decipher what was written, but the words were too complicated. What is this, Valerie? They're adoption papers, honey. Papers that say that officially, legally, you're our daughter now. The meaning of the words took a few seconds to be processed by Izzy's 5-year-old mind. When she finally understood, her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of a deep joy that overflowed in a radiant smile. Does that mean you're my real parents now? We've always been your parents at heart, said Ben, kneeling beside her. Now we are on paper too. And can I call you Daddy and Mommy? "You can call us whatever you want, as long as it's with love," replied Valerie, hugging the girl. Donna Carmen, who watched the scene from the kitchen door, wiped her eyes with her apron. In recent months, she had become much more than a housekeeper. She was the grandmother Izzy had never had, the constant support figure that completed that unconventional family. "Donna Carmen," said Izzy, running to her, "now you're my grandma officially too. I've always been, my dear. I've always been." The visit to the cemetery was a moment of emotional closure that everyone had been waiting for. Joanna Santos's grave was simple, marked only by a modest tombstone with her name and dates. Izzy placed the daisies carefully and sat on the grass next to the grave. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "I came to tell you that I'm okay. The bad men who hurt you are in jail now, thanks to the papers you kept to protect me." Ben and Valerie remained at a respectful distance, allowing Izzy to have her private moment with her mother. "Mom, I found a new family who loves me very much. Daddy Ben is kind and strong, and he protects me from everything. Mommy Valerie was kind of tough at first, but now she plays with me and teaches me important things. And Grandma Carmen makes the most delicious cookies in the world." A gentle breeze rocked the flowers, and Izzy smiled as if she had received an answer. "I know you're proud of me, Mom, and I promise I'll always be brave, like you taught me." She touched the beaded bracelet she still wore every day. "I'll keep this bracelet forever, to remember you. But now I also have other happy memories to keep." When she finally stood up, Izzy looked one last time at the tombstone and whispered, "Thank you for giving me to them, Mom. They take very good care of me." On the way back home, Izzy asked a question that caught everyone by surprise. "Daddy Ben, are you and Mommy Valerie going to have a baby?" "Why do you ask that, honey?" "Because yesterday I heard you talking about giving Izzy a little brother or sister. And it would be really cool to have someone small to teach the things I've learned." Ben and Valerie exchanged a meaningful look. It was true that they had talked about expanding the family, but they didn't imagine that Izzy had overheard. "Would you like to have a little brother or a little sister?" asked Valerie. "I'd really like to. I could teach him how not to be afraid when it's dark, how to find food when he's hungry, and especially how to recognize good people and bad people." The answer revealed how Izzy had transformed her traumatic experiences into wisdom that she could transmit to other children. She didn't see her past as something that limited her, but as knowledge that strengthened her. 3 months later, on a spring afternoon perfumed by the flowers of the renovated garden of the Caldwell house, the official adoption party of Izzy took place. It was a small and intimate celebration, with only the most important people present: Detective Silver, who had become a friend of the family; Dr. Ed, who was monitoring Ben's complete recovery; Izzy's teacher, Ms. Maria Jose, and some neighbors who had accompanied the entire journey. "Today is a very special day," said Ben, raising a toast with grape juice. Izzy had insisted that everyone drink the same thing. "A year ago, a brave girl saved me on the street. Today, I can officially say that she saved much more than my life. She saved my soul. And mine too," added Valerie. "Izzy taught me that family isn't about blood or social conventions. It's about choosing to love someone unconditionally." Izzy, wearing a yellow dress that Donna Carmen had sewn, especially for the occasion, smiled at everyone present. "I wanted to say something important too." Everyone turned to her, curious about what the 5-year-old girl had to say. "When I lived on the street, I thought the world was full of only bad people. After I met you, I learned that the world has bad people and good people, but the good people are stronger when they stick together." She paused, looking at each face in the room. "Now I have a family, I have friends at school, I have a house where I can sleep without fear. But the most important thing is that I've learned that even when bad things happen, good things can always appear later if we don't give up believing." The silence that followed was filled with emotion. Detective Silver, a man who had seen much suffering and injustice in his career, discreetly wiped away a tear. "Izzy," said Ms. Maria Jose, her teacher, "do you want to be a teacher when you grow up? Because you have a gift for teaching important things." "I want to be many things," Izzy replied thoughtfully. "I want to be a teacher to teach children to read beautiful stories. I want to be a detective to protect other children from bad men. And I want to be a mother to take care of children who don't have families." "You can be all of that," said Ben, hugging his official daughter, "and we will support you in all your dreams." When the party ended and the guests left, the family gathered in the living room for an intimate moment. Donna Carmen brought a photo album she had secretly prepared, a visual record of Izzy's entire journey, from the early days in the house to that moment of celebration. The first photo showed Izzy in the hospital, still dirty and scared, holding Ben's hand. The last photo had been taken that same afternoon, showing a radiant girl surrounded by her family, with a smile that illuminated the entire image. "Look how you've changed," said Valerie, turning the pages slowly. "I haven't changed," Izzy corrected. "I just found where I belonged." That night, after Izzy fell asleep in her room, now decorated with drawings of colorful birds she had made herself, Ben and Valerie sat on the porch of the house where it had all begun. "Do you regret anything?" asked Valerie. "Only one thing," replied Ben, "that it took me so long to realize that you are an extraordinary mother. And you, an extraordinary father. Izzy was lucky to find us." "Actually," said Ben, watching the stars over Harmony Creek, "I think we were the lucky ones to find her." In the next room, Izzy slept peacefully for the first time in her life, knowing that she would wake up the next day in the same bed, in the same house, with the same people who loved her. In her dreams, she flew with colorful birds over a city where all children had loving families, where no one went hungry or cold, and where bad people were always defeated by the courage of good people. It was the dream of a girl who had faced the worst that the world could offer and still managed to maintain hope. A girl who had lost a biological family but found a family of the heart. A girl who had started her journey as a victim of the most cruel circumstances but ended as a heroine of her own story of redemption. And as she slept, holding her beaded bracelet in one hand and a teddy bear in the other, Izzy Santos Caldwell smiled, knowing that tomorrow would be just another happy day in a life that had finally found its place in the world. The girl who had been burned and abandoned was now protected and loved. The child who had survived on the streets now slept in a soft bed. The witness who had risked everything to do justice now lived in total safety. It was a happy ending achieved with much suffering, but it proved that even the stories that begin in the deepest darkness can end in the brightest light when there are people willing to fight for love and justice. And so, in the small Harmony Creek, an unconventional but deeply united family continued writing their love story, one happy day at a time.